Thank you, Abigail, for that thoughtful introduction. As Abigail said, my name is Hodan Ahmed, and I come from Somalia. I left my country at a very young age, but not by choice. I was forced by the civil war that happened in Somalia. I lived in India a decade following that, where I did most of my studies and graduated from university. And when I finished my education, I thought it was time for me to go back home and give back to my country so that my children can grow up as a proud Somalis, an opportunity that I personally did not have. Because as growing up, every time I would hear there was these fights going on in Somalia, and I was ashamed of the Somali leaders. So I wanted to change that. My first trip to Mogadishu in 2003, I was devastated by the level of destructions that Mogadishu, what was once the capital city of Somalia, that I remember the beautiful buildings and beaches, what has become of Mogadishu? Mogadishu has turned into a town of IDP camps. I could not believe that. I could also see the sufferings of young women and mothers and children who were suffering intolerably, all because of warlords who were so hungry for power. What was even more painful for me was to see young girls at the age of 6 years old going through this terrible practice of FGM, female genital mutilation. They had no choice. They had to go through that. At that time, I knew that it was time for me to help these girls. It was time for me to save them. Unfortunately, it was not safe for me to live in Mogadishu at that time. So I settled in Nairobi, and I looked at opportunities to work with development organizations who focus on issues of FGM and HIV and AIDS. After working with several years with these organizations and working on these issues, and creating awareness among the communities to stop this cruel FGM, things were not working. Things were not improving. And I was like, what is missing here? We are putting a lot of efforts and a lot of resources to create awareness. We wanted to stop the practice of FGM. What is not working? There was a gap between the grassroots efforts to deal with these issues and national laws and policies that were not responding to the problem. And I realized that no matter what we did, no matter how many awareness we created, no matter how many people we reached, you can't make a long-term improvement to the people's lives without having politicians and political institutions make those issues priority. And so I again looked for opportunities, and I sat and I said, how can I get access to these politicians? What women in the parliament were doing? I was angry at that time. I wanted to find out what were women in the parliament doing to stop this practice. So I joined NDI in 2010, hoping that working with politicians, and especially with women in the parliament, would help improve the daily lives of all Somalis, especially for those women and children. After having access to women in the parliament, it wasn't easy for them. I realized that women in the parliament themselves had a long way to go. There was a security challenge for them. There was a resource challenge for them. They needed themselves to be empowered so that they can talk about these issues. But with the little resources that was available to them, I worked closely with women in the parliament and women in the civil society and lobbied amongst traditional elders and religious leaders to outlaw female genital mutilation. Today, the adopted constitution of Somalia has a clause that prohibits FGM. This was such a remarkable victory for me personally, but I also know that it's not time for me yet to rest. I have a long way to go. And Somalia has a new government in place now, and I believe that there are many opportunities to address these issues. So let me take you back a little bit on NDI's work in Somalia. NDI started working in Somalia in 2005. At that time, NDI was one of the few organizations who worked on the issues on governance sector and supported government and public institutions in Somalia. NDI's first goal was to empower women in the parliament and help them get involved in peace and reconciliation process of the country. But it was difficult to find financial support. Multilateral donors were not yet invested in Somalia, and NDI had to rely on small fundings from National Endowment for Democracy and private donors so that we could begin with our work with women. Unfortunately, 8 years down the line, as I stand here today, we still struggle to find financial support to promote women's political participation in Somalia. So today, I'm honored to announce that NDI is launching Madeleine K Albright Project, a global fund to support women to participate, compete, and lead in political life. As Secretary Albright says very often, there will never be a progress on issues like FGM, HIV and AIDS, education for young girls, and economic empowerment unless women are empowered and increase their numbers in the halls of the parliament and corridors of power. But to make that happen, we need your support and we need your help. The Madeleine Albright Project is the way you can get involved today in NDI's work and help women to determine their own future, the future of their families, and the future of their country. Before I close my remarks, I would like to recognize my family who are scattered around the world, who are following me, some of them now. They are in the US, they're in the UK, in Kenya, in Somalia, around the world, name it. And I want to tell them that inshallah very soon we will all unite and live in peaceful Somalia again. I thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules today and coming to this event. Thank you so much.